Hi there, I thought I'd put together a really quick tutorial video on making a low poly pine tree that you can use in your Unity games. So for starters, you're going to need a texture that you can put together in any drawing program, whether it be Illustrator, Photoshop, Procreate, Krita, whatever you're comfortable with, as long as it can export a PNG with an alpha channel. And so we're just going to make one column of leaves and then export that with the PNG background. And then I went ahead and I put together an example of what we're going to be putting together today in Cinema 4D for our geometry, and then I'll take us over to Unity and show how to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and hide this so we can get started fresh. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this tree leaves for now. And let's go ahead and make a plane. Let's give it no width or height segments. Then we need to come over to our texture and find out what the dimensions are. So our dimensions are 800 by 1920. Cool. So that means I need to make my plane, for the time being, 800 by 1920. So that way I can make sure my texture doesn't stretch. Okay. So from there, what I can do now is create a new texture here in this texture. I'm going to double click that just so I can get this material editor window. I'm going to drag the texture we created and put it into the color channel. So there's the color channel. And pull back up. There we go. Place that in there. And now that I've got that in there, I'm going to go to the alpha channel, check that on, come to textures, bitmaps, and grab that same texture. And then from there, what we can do is just apply it to our plane. And so that is the tree column. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit C to make it editable. I'm going to go Shift C, I look up Axis Center. And then from there, it's going to start off at 0, so I want to take it over to the positive X. All the way over. There we go. And then once I've done that, I'm going to center it, so Alt 0. And now I'm going to make a cloner. And I'm going to put the tree column there in the cloner. And then so from here, what I want to do is I want to make the transform in the cloner. I'm going to pitch it 90 degrees, so they're upright. And then I'm going to go to the cloner object tab, change it to radial. And I'm going to make the radius 0. There we go. So now they're all perfectly lined up center-wise. And then from there, what I can do is take my count and turn it up to how many ever you'd like. I'm going to probably make mine about, say, 20. That's fine. And then now I need to, for now, I'll make a tree trunk really quick, just so that way I can get an idea of scale. And so, I don't know, let's say we want our trees to be like 100 feet tall. So go 100 feet. Ooh, okay, so it's probably going to need to be bigger. Maybe less than that. Let's say 20 feet. Okay, that's a little more reasonable. So I can come to my cloner, T for scale, scale the entire thing down, just like that. Then I'm going to take my tree trunk and scale that way down. Move it down. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this shorter there, just like that. Cool. So now that we got that going on, I'm going to go ahead and apply that there. And then I'm going to go ahead and group this all together really quickly in a null. Call this pine tree. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that axis center again. So Shift C, axis center. And then instead of it being 100% on the X, I want it to be negative 100% on the Y. And I want it to include children and use all objects, and hit execute. So now that's at the bottom of our tree, and now I can hit Alt-0 to center that to the center of our world. Alrighty, looks okay for now. I think the only last thing I would like to do is on the tree trunk, I'm going to go to the caps, and I'm going to turn off caps because I don't want any geometry on the top or bottom there that we're not really going to be seeing. So that way it saves us a little bit on the polygon count. Alright, so now what I'm going to want to do is right click, current state to object, or let's just instead do connect objects. There we go. So now we got a pine tree there. We go and delete that 0.1 there. And let's go ahead and go File, Export FBX. Make sure your camera's lights are off. We're going to leave the materials on this one. And then I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to export that to my pine tree folder. And we're going to make our way over to Unity. So here I made sure to have Unity open. I have an FBX folder. That's where I'm going to put my pine tree. FBX, drag that in there. And then what I can do is I can make materials that will apply on here, or in that selection I can say extract materials and tell it to just put it in the same folder. Here's the FBXs, or I can make a new folder and call it materials and place it in there. And so now I have a folder here, new materials, with that in there. And so if I place this in my scene, we can see that obviously that's not quite doing what we want it to do, and that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this material here. I'm going to go ahead and rename that really quickly. This is going to be our tree leaves. There we go. And so here in our material settings, what we'll need to do is change it to both, so that way now it's showing all the way around. And then we're going to need to bring in our texture. And so I'm going to grab our pine tree leaves texture and drag it. I'll just put it here for now in the materials folder, but you can make a textures folder. And now I can go ahead and drag this into the base map here. And so we can see it's not quite doing what we want it to do. What we need to tell it to do is to say alpha clipping. And once that's checked on, now we can see that it has cut off all that alpha there. I'm going to go ahead and turn down the smoothness on this because it is way too shiny for tree leaves. And I believe that's pretty much it. Yeah, that would be an okay low poly pine tree. If you wanted to add a little bit of variation to your pine tree before export, in Cinema 4D, what you can do is on the cloner here, we can add a random effector. And so on the random effector, instead of it changing the position like it's doing here, though you could still have it change position, we'll say 0. We'll maybe only have it move 2 centimeters up and down, and 0 again. And so now what it's doing is it's, let's see, maybe not on the Y. I'll have to test out which one it is in this case. There we go, on the Z in this case, just because our pine tree leaves are rotated 90 degrees, so the up-down vector is actually on the Z. So a little bit of variation in the height using the random effector, so that way what we get is a little bit of offsetting in the leaves this way, so it doesn't look perfectly circular. And then the other thing to watch out for in Cinema 4D, so that it doesn't do this strange thing that it's doing here while you're testing stuff out, is to turn off tile. And so that kind of usually fixes that a little bit. Alright, so from here, what we can do is we can also add just a little bit of rotation if you wanted. And so just testing out which is doing what. So I can add a little bit of H rotation, see how it looks. Yeah, it's not too bad. I don't want it to be tearing too much. So like this is banking it side to side in this case. I don't quite like what that did, but maybe this is kind of moving them so that they're not all uniform when you go around, which is fine. If we look from the bottom, we can kind of see what's happening there. So you can see it's giving it just a little bit of that. So we can do that, and then you would just do the same process. You would connect objects and then export it and apply the texture to your material over in Unity. Alrighty, hopefully that was helpful. I hope you have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.